Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
Everything sounds so much better if you curse.
What do you have in store for me?
I don't even know
I love these because think, put yourself in my seat where you're having this conversation, and it's up to the person. You're sitting with somebody who's taking you on some kind of adventure or ride. Whereas in Bosnia, Chernobyl, and I don't know what's coming up. It's like a theme park.
I sent you 5 pictures. I don't even know what the next one is.
Well, we're only going to use 4. So here we go.
Okay.
You have awesome photos. Okay, this one's called Mongolia. It's a shot of one of the first podcast episodes I had was with a woman who's Mongolian living in Hong Kong.
All right.
And so one of her photographs showed the incredible landscape, and it was just because it is so unique. And so in this image here, it's made from on high. It could be a drone where you could be standing on a weird peak. I have no idea why, because you're looking down and there's this sort of gray van with blued out rear windows. It's going through a river and not very deep. It's probably maybe 2 or 3 feet deep, or say half a meter deep. There's snow on the banks. It's extremely rocky. Up the banks, there's really fine grasses. So it's not very tall grass. It's super low. It looks almost like a golfing green. But because lots of vehicles have gone through it before, you see the tire tracks and whatever. It's in Mongolia. The water's pretty. It's an excellent photo. Yeah. What am I looking at?
Yeah, that was during a little road trip in 2019, like 10 days through Mongolia. I was using a drone at this point,
okay,
and I had a driver. So usually I do everything by myself. But after a bit of research, and even talking to locals, they said you can't.
You need a driver.
If you're more than one person, then maybe it's fine. But there are no roads,
right?
As you see here, you know.
Yeah.
And this was just, you got lucky with this one. You can see tire tracks, but there were places there were no tire tracks.
Right.
He would just go straight through a field. I'm like, I don't know if that's going to end well.
Sure.
Because I'm not a guy, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, the point is that he had to cross the riverbed, and this was at the end of the afternoon time on a day where it got super heavy snowfall during the night before. And he woke me up and he said, we have to, I mean, he spoke 5 words of English.
Okay.
Go. And I didn't know what's happening. Apparently, because the snow covered everything, he couldn't navigate by the cart tracks anymore that he would usually use as a sense of navigation.
Right.
And so everything was just white. And he would always dip into the riverbed and be like, no, back out, and then follow the river for a few minutes, then dip in again to see, no.
Sure. Oh, to see how deep the water was.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And so at this point, and I also created an image film, that's why I have the drone with me all the time as well. There was just a very nice scene because it covers the whole 5 seconds of the car going in the water, going through, coming back out, and then cuts to a higher angle of the whole scenery. But this was probably the most remote place I've ever been, because I've been in contact with maybe 5 people throughout 10 days.
Yeah.
Not including my driver.
Yeah.
And like why I do trips like this one is I think a lot of today's problems in general, they stem from a lack of knowledge.
Okay.
Maybe the knowledge of a different religion, a knowledge of a different culture, or whatever.
But we're human, right? And knowledge is our medium. So
exactly. So I always force myself into these situations. Nice. So he said, like, along the way, there were, I mean, not he, but the woman that owns the company, she speaks very well English, and then she assigns a driver to you. But she beforehand said, there are different places that have a few hotels. And I said, I don't want hotels. I want to sleep in the nomad camps.
Okay.
So he would bring me to a nomad camp. He would have to look, because he said,
I don't know if there's something there.
He said, go. He probably meant like that they're moving, which is what nomads do, right? Sure. But then he would find them, he would talk to them, and for $5 he could spend the night. And these are the moments that I remember, because I remember there was a time he like knocked on the door, opened, there was a woman like breastfeeding her baby, and the guy, and then they talked and they waved their hands at me. I was just standing there like, I don't know, that they were talking.
I'm German!
It's me. And so they were like, and you can see by their response that they said, yeah, no problem. And then he came to me, he said, dollar, and showed 5 with his hands, and I gave him $5. And so they would show me another tent, and I would set up my stuff, and then he came and said dinner, and then I walked back, and then the woman just handed that baby to me. I held it, and then everyone left the tent.
That's
I was standing there with a baby. I'm like, why would you put? But then you already noticed that's your way of thinking, because you think, why would that person give that baby to a stranger?
Yeah.
And then the answer is simple, because they don't have any reason to not trust anyone.
Right.
Because who would come to their place and do anything weird? I mean, you're in the middle, you're like hundreds of kilometers from the next city.
Right.
If you like screw with them, you're just not coming back.
You're stuck, so, that's a good point.
And I was sitting there with that baby, and it smiled at me, and after like 10, 15 minutes, I would like open the door with my foot, and I would see how they're on the horseback riding, like putting the cattle together.
That is awesome.
And I was like, that's exactly the moments,
really
and that goes with everything. And if people would be exposed more to like situations, cultures, religions, all that kind of stuff, then you would have probably the same result as when you grow up in a diverse city versus a small town isolated somewhere that has no exposure to like, foreign people.
Right.
Because that's by studies pretty much where like you have a higher rate of like racism is where you never have been exposed to anything.
Right. Funny you should say that. In a previous podcast episode, he happens to be my cousin's son who went traveling around. He ended up in Mongolia. He ended up in one weird city. I don't remember which city. He's in Mongolia, and he goes, Rand, you know what's really surprising there? I was like, what? He goes, the amount of Nazi paraphernalia. Mm. Did you notice this?
No, not really.
He said that there was so much like German Nazism. Like it was just like for them, it was untethered to the history, but they just kind of walked around with all this paraphernalia, and so he was just like, what's going on here?
Yeah. I mean, I was just touched down in the city for like a night and headed out the next morning really early.
Is that crazy? It's weird.
Yeah, it is.
Anyways,
weird.
Yeah, it's very strange. But so sorry. Okay, so in terms of your photography, would you consider you gravitate more towards landscape, more towards nature? So one of the things about photography that people say is the most interesting subject to other people is people. Mm-hmm. People tend to like looking at photos of people. And the one thing so far is, well, there was you, kind of, in the waterfall.
Yeah, as a reference.
As a reference point. But, and I know this is just really not artificial, but this is very highly, I guess, artificial in the sense that I say to you, pick 4 photographs of the thousands that you have to frame the conversation. And from that, I'm just jumping to conclusions. But how do you feel that this image or your images, when somebody comes to look at them, speaks to that notion of so inspiring other people or moving other people's emotions?
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason why the focus is on nature and landscape is, I think people have to get a better awareness of how beautiful the planet is. Yeah. I also wrote a book like a year ago about the topic of overconsumption and overpopulation, because like the whole nature...
Shut the fuck up! No. Okay, we're going to go into there too. Yes.
I'm really concerned about the planet itself, which again is weird because like then I travel a lot, right? People could say, if you're that concerned, what about, air travel?
Footprint, blah, blah, yeah.
But if I do travel, I'm always going on a low profile, like, on these trips, I'm not... I really like go with a low footprint as much as I can. But I want to show people like this is what you're messing up.
Right.
Like may it be Bosnia, may it be Mongolia, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's all the same system.
Biosphere.
It's all the same system. Yeah. So if we screw that up a little longer, then that's it, right? So that's the purpose of
Now, what is the title of your book?
It's called
Dude, like I'm saying,
it's German.
It's German. I know. Wait, 1 second. 1 second. Take this as a total compliment. I'm gonna punch you in the head. That's fucking amazing. Okay, so say it in German.
Die Überbevölkerung.
Die Überbevölkerung.
Yeah, die overpopulation. It's a provocative title because it's not what it is. Yeah. Because people tend to think overpopulation means too many people. Right. On too small of a space. Right. Which is not it. You could I did like some math on the areas of different countries, and you could put every single human being on this planet right now onto the area of Greenland, and the rest of the world would be empty. So then I'll go chapter by chapter to tell people about like definitions and stuff, because a lot of people did a survey before the book and then based the chapters on the outcome of the survey, and then have everyone, it's also in the book, fill out the survey to see what they know about the topic, and then at the end go back, because the conclusion is also like the same order of the questions.
Sure.
And then most people will realize, I had a completely wrong idea about this and that and whatever.
Why isn't it being translated into English?
I don't really know. I just wrote it. Also did a lot of references, political references in Germany, and I don't know much about that in different countries.
Sure,
right?
sure.
So yeah, the main point at the end is that overpopulation is used as a term, and it is completely, you shouldn't use the word because it puts a wrong idea in people's heads.
Okay.
When I ask people what comes to mind when you think of overpopulation, you probably think of like a trash river, smog in the city, and all these kinds of things, which none of these things is just based on numbers. Like only, it's just of what we do. And so just yesterday I walked into a mall here, and maybe it's not typical for people, but when I go to a mall or whatever, and it's when I need something, I'm like, okay, it's time. You need a new pair of jeans, you need a new sweater, and maybe a bit of new underwear. And then I get it, I go home. And when I hear the word, let's go shopping for the purpose of, we don't even know what we buy. It drives me nuts. It's like, that is where we are. We buy shit on purpose that we know we don't even need it. It's like, oh, look, that's on sale. I'm like, do you need it? No, but it's on sale. But it's not the point to buy it. You know,
consumption.
Like that kind of thing. And so that all gives you a bigger picture of why landscape, why nature photography, why the idea of, the issue with the planet. And everything.
So overpopulation. You're a tissue engineer. You go to places where people don't go to because it's remote. And it's clearly examples of, you're coming from Hong Kong. Have you been to Hong Kong?
I was planning on it to visit Anna, but then COVID happened.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So Hong Kong is, of all the cities, is the densest. Super, 7.5 million. So essentially it's like, take Toronto and crunch it into like 1/3 the space. So everybody builds up, right? Yeah. But a lot more green. How do you tie that back to being a tissue engineer?
I think it's unrelated, really.
No, you can relate it. You can do it.
I mean, there's a sense of like biology, interested in, the biological level of things. How do things work? How can you make things better? Because that's essentially what you're doing. Right now, I do stem cell research that serves the same purpose. In this case, you're not working on the entire system, as of the world, but, you're trying to make a change in someone's personal issues.
Right.
Always something for the better. I always try to show people there's different ways. There's, you can do this about that problem. You can, probably that.
So the podcast is really about inspiring listeners from people's energy. So one of the things they'll realize is, dude, this guy talks fast. Your energy is up, and you don't even drink coffee, which is just amazing. Okay, so we have that going. How did you become you? Like, what? Do you have siblings?
No.
You're the only baby?
Yeah. Which made it a bit hard for me to leave home, right? Because I have a really good, intact family relationship.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. And so what were your parents like that you would become such a conservationally oriented person?
Well, they were both like, I would say like the typical kind of normal workers. My mom works as a nurse. My dad works as I don't even know what the English word for that is. He just worked. He's retired now in some kind of assembly hall, like, with his hands, like, hardworking jobs. Yeah. And then I went to school, and then I started to learn a job after school, and then decided to go back to school, night school, get my high school degree, and then go study. They were like, we don't know, because, my school grades weren't the best. Yeah. But that's just because I assumed that when you like between 9 and 14, 15, 16, you don't fucking know what you want to do with your life. How would you know? But people expect you to leave school and say, I'm going to become a lawyer. Right. And then you haven't even figured out that you have an issue of memorizing stuff, which is all you do when you're a lawyer, right? So it took me for years, but that's why I got good at what I did after, because then I knew exactly what I didn't want. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to university, I'm going to study something with science, and then see what happens.
Amazing.
Didn't plan to get my PhD. I was just, okay, I'm just going to go for how long it
just
works.
Made sense.
And then I did, and then everything just naturally happened from there.
Wicked. Which city did you grow up in?
It's called Kaiserslautern.
Kaiserslautern?
It's very close to Ramstein, which is a very big American air base, and that's pretty close to Frankfurt.
Got it.
So an hour south of Frankfurt. Right.
Oh, man. Yeah, my head is bursting. I love it. And I'm not really going to hit you, but I love it. Okay, so first book or many books?
It was the first. Now that I moved to the States, I'm thinking of writing a post-pandemic book.
Okay.
With a chronological timeline about all the things that did and did not go well.
So, you consider yourself? I can sort of pick up on the fact that as an engineer and as a scientist, you understand the scientific method and the training of saying, okay, hold on. The train of popular thinking may be going in one direction, but that isn't necessarily the true direction. There is a kind of truth somewhere, and how to get to it. So do you consider yourself a contrarian thinker? Like sort of saying, everybody's thinking this, I'm going to look over there because that might actually be more accurate.
Yeah, almost. I would say when something happens, like the pandemic, I don't think I want to do something different because everyone does it. I'm like, this really doesn't feel right. Or like sometimes like, why do we do this? And then I go into some research and I'm like, okay, what could be the reason behind this? And then if I have a hard time finding it, I'm like, no, this doesn't make any sense, but I don't have the platform to express this so people would hear it. So it doesn't really matter.
One of the things that really impressed me about Anna, some people are scientists or scientifically minded, but they don't seem to have an understanding of the scientific method. From her training as a teacher and also as a practitioner, it's very clear to her how to do science properly and the boundaries. And I get the feeling of this from you as well. So did you guys ever talk shop as well in that sense and feel kind of an alignment?
We just really got along very well from the beginning. Right. So like everything we talked about. I mean, we started with science, obviously, because it was a science fair, right? Right. But then we talked about everything and it was just amazing. Perfect, yeah. I actually had a concert in the city the night after the science fair.
A concert.
Yeah, because I'm a musician as well,
of course you are.
And I scheduled a concert in Rhodes. It was on the island of Rhodes, and I was there like 6 years before with my wife, and I met a guy that was a guitarist, and he would play a show in this one bar every week. And I said, "Hey, can I play there when I get there? I have free time on a Thursday night." And then Anna came with all the people she knew. And then it was this bar full of people. We all got wasted. Okay. And we had to be at the conference again at 8 a.m. So that's where we like, okay, we got to do.
And I'm also a musician, right? Do you fix cars?
No, not yet.
No. Electronics?
No.
You suck. Yeah. Dude, you're amazing. Okay, shall we go on to the next photo?
Let's do it. I don't even know which one of the two I sent you it is.
So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.